cultures, but for so many different cultures that we have to look after. So it's a really important aspect. Now, we are a Chippendale-based community, business, and we're part of the Chippendale community. So it is, we proudly support local businesses that are also in Chippendale. So we have beautiful food and catering from Julia's Cafe just down the road. Thank you, Ralph, for letting us use the wonderful space and for letting us share it with this really fine exhibition. We have representatives from there, graphic designers who have prepared a beautiful application that we have at the door, so please help yourself. And Julian Bastard is a young up-and-coming designer. So it's a fantastic local community with a lot of vibrancy, arts, culture, and really interesting businesses that all actually know each other and work well together. So let me get started. This was a trip that I did in September. 2 years ago, I went to Paris and did a similar thing, but with a little bit less preparation. So I went to Paris, and while I was there, I found places to look at and went and explored a little bit of the new seniors developments that are happening in the city. Very urban, very different from here. They share the public space with the new buildings, and they're not sort of fenced or gated. And it was quite a different philosophy, but it was really insightful to see it. So this time I thought I'd do a little bit of homework up front and research the places I wanted to see. A lot of them are published on architectural websites. Very little is actually published in seniors living and more of a sort of hair-based media. So it was quite interesting just to see how they really are promoted from a design point of view rather than the care aspect. The care aspect is sort of a little hidden. But it's really so important to see how they do things in different hemispheres, as well as just different cultures. So I went to Norway. Oh, sorry, before I finish, I'm sure everybody knows where Scandinavia is. It's Northern Europe. Scandinavia is Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and I was quite interested when I looked at the map, because Norway really has the western coast. Sweden is the big country, and Denmark is really small. But I went to Norway and Denmark. And I'm showing 5 projects that I visited. Asaheimen, which is in Norway, Vindmollabakken, Kapadian, and Fyrsted Hegeby are all in Norway, and then the Rostad Play Center is in Copenhagen. So if we start with Asaheimen, it is right on the western coast, just north of Bergen in a place called Sana. It's a suburb of Bergen. It was designed by the Nordic Office of Architecture, who are very invested and very involved in seniors living. And it was developed by the local council. So most of these projects that you see here are developed, owned and run by the council. So government funding is quite generous. These are quite wealthy countries also, but they taken very strong ownership of the quality of the seniors housing that they are producing. And in a similar way to the Royal Commission that happened here, they had a big audit on a lot of their sort of institutional properties, including prisons. But seniors housing was one of the things that they highlighted as really needing to follow their mantra around human rights. So they have quite a strict expectation on caring for people and respecting people's human rights, no matter what age they have and no matter what level of dementia they have. So it was a households that manage to gather around that central core. So it's a 4-story building, and from the outside it's quite austere. Some people have commented that it looks like prison, but it is a very contemporary building, and it is a really simple building, not trying to be anything fussy or particularly complicated. And once you get to understand it, it does make sense. But it's on a hilltop, and so you approach it from a winding driveway. I'm always interested from an architectural point of view to see what the vision started off as and how it ended up, how it translated into the reality. Because quite often it can be a little different. But this one, and this is a practice that has some quite lovely visionary renders, and so the imagery looks really lovely. But you saw initially it looks quite severe and quite hard. But I think that it is softening over time, and obviously that landscape element that is so prominent in the render is something, it's another layer that's coming. This building is recently opened, so it's quite new. It actually happens to be full, so it's addressing a really dire need because there's a lot of people that get accommodated very quickly. But I think that the landscape that we are used to, which is quite sort of verdant and lush, there is it's a little missing, but they use the outside spaces regardless. And you'll see through the slides the focus and the importance of the outside spaces, irrespective of the climate and the weather. So from the front, your approach is through the car park, and the entrance is a really down-playable entry. There's no ramp or share, there's no big covered entry or sort of petrol station type of arrival point, but it's very underplayed. And that is the only entrance. It's actually quite hard to find, and it took me a while. The tactile indicators you see here are everywhere, not just in this building, but all aged care and seniors living that I saw in Norway. And they make no attempt to sort of soften them. They're dark, they're rubber, they're very visible. This is taking you to a straight line to the stair and to the lift. Asylum is a dementia-specific facility, so everybody here has some level of dementia. They have 22 beds that are more high care, but essentially everybody runs the whole building. They're not really limited to their own wing, but they do use the stairs. So again, I just love this. In Scandinavia, there's just such a focus on craftsmanship and detail, and they have beautiful furniture. You'll see all the way through, there's really lovely furniture. And everything, even just a simple bench at the entry, is just this lovely element, beautifully crafted. This building is made out of timber, so the structural elements are timber, and all of the precast panels and walls that infill are timber. And that timber is your final finish inside. So it literally gets built like that, and that's it. There's no paint, plasterboard, setting, you see the joints, and then they just use it. And it's really quite interesting to see. So this building is very timbery and very warm because of the timber floors, and that's I might be wrong to say this is real timber, it may not be. But this is the stair in the middle, which they call the heart center. So the heart center is where all those wings basically radiate from. It's the middle, it's the wayfinding, sort of the center point of the building, and everybody knows that if they get lost, they just come to the heart center, and they will find their way. But it's this beautiful back-end stair that has this lovely free opportunity to go up and down as you like. The building uses very deliberate use of colour, and this is a very sort of exotic wallpaper that's at the end of that corridor to sort of draw people down to the lifts and the stairs, and it's really a feature. And then as you go up the stair, on every level, there's a little bit of detail set against this really stark, quite minimalist contemporary interior that gives you a hint of a little bit of memorabilia or something from the past. So these are just little glass jelly molds that they've arranged on the wall. So there's just a little bit of it rather than too much clutter and too much stuff. And it's a philosophy. I'm not saying it's the right or the wrong way to do, but it's something that people can sort of be drawn to for a point of interest. The main aspect of this building is that it's very pared back and very minimal. It's really calm. It's not got a lot of paraphernalia around it, and it's just really simple and easy to navigate. And because of the quite minimalist interior, it's foot. So as we leave this building, the driveway winds back down the hill, and you can see that it's sited on the top of the hill. It's got a really nice landscape around it. There's beautiful trees and forest, and it sits there really well. And I just wanted to put this slide here because so often when we develop buildings, we're instructed to follow the streetscape and the character and the housing. This is the typical character of the housing around it, but it's quite a different type of building. It's quite a rugged landscape around it, but it sits there really well. It's actually quite a comfortable siting. And then when we get to the bottom of the hill, you can see the rock bands where the high bigger building where it is. And this is the sister building that's being constructed, which is going to be a respite daycare, allied health centre, and a general wellness precinct for residents in the nursing home as well as the wider community. And it'll have a tunnel that will go through the rock up into the new nursing home. So it'll be connected but separate. And I'm just really interested because it's all built on timber. So the whole building is going up super fast with these prefabricated timber panels, timber columns, there's a bit of steel, obviously there's a bit of concrete and a core. And then this is the architect's finished render and vision for that finished building. So it's going to look a little different, it's got a different colour palette, but that's the one up on the hill, and this is the one on the bottom. So it's going to be quite an interesting precinct, and I just think it's got a lot of architectural merit for the nursing home building and this building. So then, after Bergen, which is a very beautiful place to visit if anyone is looking to travel in Norway, I caught the bus down to Stavanger, which is also on the west coast, and you can see the topography meant that the bus had to cross many fjords and waterways, and it was constantly on a car ferry and back on the land, and then very scenic, very beautiful. And Stavanger is a delightful town. And Vindmollebakka is not a care facility, and it's not even a retirement facility, it's a co-housing community that started off, the vision for the development was conceived by the architects, Helen and Hart, and the client, and they tried to imagine an ideal place for people to age in, with like-minded people, but also with younger people. So they wanted to experiment a little bit, and they weren't quite sure how it was going to work, how the market would take it up, because it was something very different, very much about sharing. Their philosophy is gaining by sharing. So your life becomes richer because you're sharing your everyday life with people who become really good friends. And it's quite a big development. It was finished in 2019, so they had people move in, go through the COVID pandemic, find strength in that community, and which really reinforced the people, the group that lived there. And it has now got a waiting list for people to move in. So it's beautiful in so many ways, but it's got a really incredible, sustainable philosophy that is embodied into the building, the reuse of many things. Recycling is a big component. They have a geothermal plant that goes deep into the ground to bring to heat the building. Their community is run by the people that live there. So it was developed privately, and people buy their unit and they pay a fee for the sharing of the services. So they have an annual fee that everyone pays, and everyone in the community has a task and a role and a duty, and it's run by a committee, and everybody is accountable and responsible for their task, and it works amazingly. And people are really proud of doing their task really well, and no one fights. There's no hierarchy. It seems like perfect paradise, but obviously they're quite strict in some ways, but it goes working really well. And they have these beautiful insulated roofs with planted cedar roofs, so very high level building is made out of these, and you can see in the double volume where the joints are on these stressed junctions. And that's Helen Hard, who is the architect, and she lives there. And I spoke to her for a while, and she's beyond delighted with the success of it. And she's been, called to speak at international forums and all sorts of global discussions on co-housing. And yeah, it's been a tremendous success. So sharing by gaining is all about the sort of communal aspect of everyday life. This is the kitchen, where it's designed so that 5 people can stand on each side of the island, and everybody can come and cook their own food, or they can decide to do a cookout together one night when they do, or however people want to do it. It's all very egalitarian. It's a very well done kitchen. It's got everything is labelled. You can see the splashback is also timber, but it's got a bit of glass across the front where the cooktops are. And food is very much part of that social aspect of sharing meals and everyday activities. They all have kitchens in their apartments, and so it's not that you have to do this, it's very much a choice. But it seems that most people do. And obviously when the weather is good, the courtyard is used, and the tables are dragged outside. And this is a very everyday event where people just want to be together, and they stay and drink wine, and they enjoy the company. And then equally the inside space can be just as flexible, and you can set up a big table or make small tables, and they just sort of spontaneously seem to happen. And you can see there's a little bit of a cross-generational mix, but a lot of the people have got red hair. So there are 40 apartments, but they share almost 600 square meters of communal space, and that communal space includes the kitchen and that dining space, and a whole lot of other things, including spaces like this, which you can rent out if you've got a guest staying. It's like there's a guest room here, or you can have a function for a big lunch or a private birthday party or something. And it's just all so lovely. It's just nicely designed. And all the way through every project that I saw, they have wonderful light fittings and really nice furniture. It makes such a difference. Then just around from that main corridor, the main entry lobby is a corridor which is a bit of a service corridor, and there are all these rooms off the side. This is one of them. This is the bike workshop, which is heavily used, as you can imagine. This is a resident. He lives here, and he reluctantly agreed to be in a photograph, and he's often called on to help people fix their bikes. But it's a really essential thing, and all these little service spaces have got a window so that there's all that sort of transparency of knowing what's going on inside, except the bathroom. The laundry, again, everything is recycled, reused. People donate their washing machine and use their own rather than getting the full industrial setup. And then there's a whole system of how you put your little Velcro marker on what you're paying for doing the wash. You can see just through here is another bike parking space, which is this. When they designed it, not that many people had electric bikes, and obviously the electric bikes have grown, so they had to put all the conduits on the wall and get power to the space. But it's working really well. There's a whole other bike store in the basement. And then I just took this photograph of the bathroom because it's so interesting to see that it's a timber wall. So that's just an unfinished timber wall. It's not coated even with anything, and it's doing just fine. So just really doesn't even seem to have a coat skirting or a sealed junction on the floor. Then, because it's got all these different levels, on the top floor is just the most beautiful view because it's high, there's an incredible outlook and all this very scenic scenery. But instead of making them sort of prime real estate with penthouse apartments, they've actually given them all to the community, and there's a whole series of rooms that everybody can use and everybody does. This is the meditation space that has a little balcony off it, and this hopefully will play. It's a little very.
Yep. Try pressing the middle button.
No?
Press the middle button.
Yeah.
Does it work?
No.
Did you play?
When I don't go forward. Focus on it.
Sure. I can try.
Sorry. Never mind. On the roof as well, they have these. Well, it's another one of the roofs. This is beautiful garden that has a little wine fridge, and people sit here and have long, important conversations. And on the veranda are all the little garden boxes, and each person can claim a little garden bed for themselves. And they're obviously doing really well, but again, it's just a beautiful, beautiful space. And as you move through the building, you can see a lot of views out. There's a lot of glazing from stairwells and obviously from people's rooms. So you get a lot of connection with the courtyards and the outside spaces. So even though you're not in them with other people, you can still see what's going on and participate from a distance. This is a typical threshold to an apartment, and this man is an architect, and he's got some quite lovely light fittings and fancy furniture, but essentially this is what everybody gets. So it's a very simple space. Again, raw timber ceilings and beams are exposed. Simple kitchen, little dining space, and a living area. And I've got this because this was a picture that was taken by the architects as the construction was finishing. So you can see it's pretty much as it was in that wall stage, it's just being occupied. So really simple and quite easy to finish, I guess. And again, because I really like to see the construction and the process of how it came to be, I love this picture because this is during the construction, and you can see again the timber structure and the supports, and that space is actually the dining room, but the builders are using it to eat their food in. So from the very beginning, it was the heart and the place where everybody came to eat and enjoy their food. And then just the final finishing is just interesting to see because it's just really like the rawness of that finished product, because it's still got the polished concrete, the rough bricks, the timber is still timber, nothing is sort of layered in all of those things that we seem to prepare with plasterboard and paint. So texturally it's really, really inviting. Okay, so we're moving on from Stavanger all the way back towards Oslo. Just outside of Oslo is the Carpe dementia village. So this is specifically for older people, and this is for people who have Alzheimer's. And it's designed by the Nordic Office of Architecture and commissioned by the municipality of Bærum. So this was opened in 2020. So it's been going for 4 years, and it's been a tremendous success. It's full, and you'll see that it just is a very inviting place to be. And it's important that I say this because you'll see the next one has got the same sort of objective that somehow didn't work as well, I don't think. But it's big, it's 18,000 square meters, and it is a really interesting place. So dementia is a really big topic because we all know about it. We design for it. We work with providers who are trying to create the best places for people to live out their years who have dementia and decreasing abilities and memory. And the way we do it in Australia, sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's a little compromised. The rules around looking after people for dementia here are a little fluid, so you can almost do what you want to do. And I think, and I'm not saying this as a criticism, because security is a really big part of looking after people with dementia. So providing a safe and secure environment for people who do want to wander or who are confused, it's really hard to do in a really sensitive, humane way. And when you look at a village like this, it looks, from the outside, it feels really nice. It's acceptable, it fits into the community. The neighborhood proudly acknowledge this as a nice place. It's not something people necessarily fear. And the perimeter of the site is actually secured by the building. So there are no fences and gates and spikes and cameras. It's just this building that just forms a very safe edge, and then people are really free to wander within in the gardens and the courtyards and all of those connecting parts. And it has a really nice calmness to it. So as you approach it, you walk up a hill, and the entry is quite unassuming. It's a single very clearly identifying the door and the entry. They use colour for the different wings. Not the prettiest, but it's functionally really good and very legible. And then there's signage inside that I thought was really nice because we obviously spend a lot of time thinking about wayfinding and signage, and these signs are rubber, so they're actually really tactile and they're raised, so you kind of want to feel them and play with them, but they don't break. So they're just really nice because they're part of that language of the aesthetic. It's not something that's stuck on with a bit of beauty. And then when you get into the resident households, they have quite a playful, delightful little element of using colour, and they have nice furniture, they have cool light fittings, and it feels interesting. I thought these were really well managed, and this is only 8 people who live here, so you don't need a small table. Everybody's involved in the kitchen, and it all opens up into that deck you saw earlier. They use colour again for the resident spaces. The white is for staff and clinical spaces. But this is another household on the upper level, which is again the architect's photograph. I didn't go into this one, but every household has a very different character and different colour. There's a greenhouse in the middle that again sort of invites people to participate in an activity, and it draws people in because it's transparent, so you can see if someone's in there, or you can see if you want to go in there, if something catches your eye, and it's quite a messy space, which means that it's really well used. And they also have this interesting little corner where they have fire pit, where they're real fires, they all sit around real fire, and real chickens, and real wood, and real axe to chop the wood. Which is a little frightening, but they do it, you're asleep. So it's safe. But I just thought it was really interesting to sort of see that reality of, maybe it's a blood tax. Plastic tax. But it's just something that they really want people to be able to do tasks that they've done in their past. So things that bring that memory back and the familiarity, and even if you just feel the wood and smell the wood, it's just something that is really familiar. And then again, the construction pictures, because it's important to see outside. This is pretty much concrete slabs. You can see the building in the back. It's multi-story and steel structures as well. So there's no timber prefab in this, although there's a lot of timber in the framing and the cladding, and obviously hugely insulated. And what's really interesting is the prefabricated bathrooms. So every building that you've seen here has prefabricated bathrooms, and it's just the normal procedure. That's the normal way of doing things. Is that they just have hot bathrooms, which I was surprised at. And that was the end of that one. Then the next is also Dementia Village, but it's same but different. And it's really hard to do a development that captures that quality or that essence that makes it successful, and has the warmth and has the joy or the beauty that makes people like being there. Sometimes you can have all the best intentions in the world and it just doesn't quite gel. I don't know, it's quite a hard thing to do when you really are. It's so important. So this one, I think, missed the mark a tiny bit. But I don't, maybe it's just because it's early and it's new, but I just thought it was an interesting thing to see as a comparison. So this was designed by Nord architects who are really expert in this field, and they've done a good job in collaboration with another firm, so the joint venture, again developed by the municipality. This is in Oslo, and it was completed in 23, so very new, quite raw, and not full. So again, like the other one, it's a little conceived as a little sort of hilltop village, and you can see on the architect's diagrams that they have designed it. Hegeby, curious at Hegeby is a garden, so it's a garden village, and these rooftops that are the gardens are all sort of interconnected, and that's your path, and you can wander around them, and it's all linked. They're actually elevated walkways and elevated gardens, but that is your sort of safe zone. And you can see the one the path, and then they have these 3 wayfinding devices that are identified by their colour, a little bit by the form, but the colour predominantly. The red building, the little greenhouse building, and the blue building, which is the entry, which is actually this green. And so this is the greenhouse. There's the red house, and that one is, I don't know why it's shown blue, it's that one. So they are quite important in that wayfinding pathway, and they sort of become key landmarks. So in the plan, you can see the gardens, and you can see the little greenhouses at the bottom. But it also has the benefit of sitting in quite a lovely landscape. So it's got a lot of green space around it, and meadow and forest. So it's sited really nicely, and it's in a rather low density suburb of Oslo. Again, it has the distribution of services, but a little differently from the one before, because the back of the house is here, and you can see the service corridor at the back that accesses the kitchen and some of the food areas, and then you go up in the lift to the households. But you have to go outside to get into that lift, which is okay, because I think the whole philosophy of the development is getting outside. And the sections up here are quite lovely sections, and they really describe how the building is sitting on the terrain, because it's a bit of a sloping site. So it steps with the site, mostly 2 stories, and you can see quite clearly that there's a service basement at the bottom. And then there's the red building, so there's a street here, and the gardens that thread through the top. Again, there's always that nice reference to what was the vision and the render, and then what actually the chart translates. But actually, it does translate really well. I think that is very much like the vision, and the garden is establishing itself, and it's quite lovely. They have these blinds to close off the windows for glare and sun, which kind of disconnect it a little bit from what they can't see. But yeah, you can see the change in level. There's a dimension garden down here, and I'll show you a household that's down here. But again, there's no gate at the top of the stairs, which I know some people would just shudder at because it doesn't feel right, but it was interesting. So yeah, just a couple of little views of that space, and then getting onto the terrace at the top, and it's quite a lovely experience of different types of spaces. Some of it's quite bare and exposed, and then some of it's quite lovely and treed. But there were residents up there, you could see that they were genuinely enjoying the space. So the railings again are a little bit high, but not as high as we probably would do, and no one seemed to find it. There's a lot of railings, there's a lot of elevated walkway and rooftop. And then you wander through these sort of lovely little glades, and then get a bit of a gateway into the main street again. So the households are all identified with colour. So then the front door off goes into the street, which is their entry threshold. They have back of house entry doors that have the same colour, but those are not for residents, it's for staff, and they're very laid back, they don't have signage and things. But it's quite interesting to see how they organise it. But the colours are a key part of the wayfinding. And what is interesting is that this open street is your corridor. So people move from their little house to the restaurant or community space or the hairdresser. They're going through the open space. Regardless of weather. And there's really bad weather here. So I just find that, a very invigorating feature of the site, because it's not about all being safe and warm and constant. It's about challenging yourself and getting out of the cold. Perhaps because those are very familiar things through the lifetime of someone who's grown up in Norway, and you just get on with it. And then the signage is also quite consistent. This is a little household that's got a blue door. They all have this very simple little glass awning just over the door. There's a red one. And it appears that this grated walkway is for the snow, so that the snow doesn't block up the walkway. But that is a really difficult thing to walk on if you are of sound mind. But if you're a little bit confused, it's going to be even more challenging. But I think they put these challenges there just to wake people up. I'm not sure, but I found it a little interesting. Because it wouldn't do that here. And again, that's another entrance, and I don't know what they've got at the front door, but I library. The signage was actually quite effective. Everything has a very simple glass door and all quite pared back and minimal. And I have this slide because every facility has this bar bathroom, this very expensive bar that people can walk into, and they'd certainly never used it here. There was another one in the Carpe Diem that they said cost a fortune, but no one had ever used it, and they've never used it. So I just put that as a privilege, don't put on. And then they have this really lovely cafe, and this is definitely interacting with the street. There are a few people outside, but it had this lovely warm feeling. It had a really rich color palette and a bar, and you could get a drink, and there was a piano, play if they wanted to, and it actually really, I think this would be one of the main draws. If I lived there, I'd want to be in this space. And again, there's the red, so that's part of your wayfinding, but just nice little sunny pockets that people could come and have coffee outside in the street, and hopefully when there are more people, lots of people walking past. But it actually, it does, and you can see there's one of those elevated walkways that connects that garden link. So there's a little bit of a just connection, but again, I think, it certainly works, and there's certainly some people walking around, but it was quite an interesting place. And actually easy to find your way around, even though it looks slightly confusing. The wayfinding was very clear. And they had a little shop as well, a boutique. And then this is one of the back of house doors, so it looks quite clinical and quite institutional in a way when you get to the back of the house. And their internal signage was a bit strange. I thought that was very odd signage that they had. I'm sorry, it's not a bell. And then this is the day centre where people from outside and community can come and spend a day, and their carers can get a break. And there's a lot of craft, a lot of activity, beautiful embroidery pieces of muslin behind the glass, and quite traditional motifs that were really lovely. So this is a typical back of house door. And from the staff point of view, it's actually quite good because the colour of the back of house door matches the colour inside the unit. So, it's kind of got a bit of an identity. No signage at all, but it's just interesting that the back of house wayfinding is mostly just relying on the colour. And then inside the unit you can see the colour. So the colour of the wall, colour of the doors, and there's the dining room. And then inside a care household you've got, again, a very homey focus, really warm, nice scale, same number of residents, 8 people in the household, and this lovely, timber joinery and detailing. And then this is the courtyard. You saw the stair before outside. You saw the stair that can have a gate. People in the kitchen. And then I've got this image here because this was from the architect's website again, but it's just showing the theming and the story around all the different households and how they use colour, I think quite cleverly, having either it's actually a kind of dark, muddy, mustardy yellow corridors behind. But I think the colours are quite clever, and the little red lights were lovely. The bathrooms are very hospitally, very functional. This is the Koopinen product, if anyone's familiar with the Koopinen hair product, which we have used. Blue light in the toilet to show where you go. And all these handles and safety things. So every bathroom I saw was like this, and I think maybe they all come from the same pot making company, but it's obviously the acceptable standard. And then there's quite a cute little sign that shows where the bathroom is. And I've got this one. This is just an empty room. It's a resident room, but it's interesting to see because it has the timber finish on the walls, and then this beautiful timber joinery. So there's no aluminium windows, or maybe there's some, but these are, I think quite simple, but I just thought it was quite a nice basic philosophy. And then this is one of those gardens of one of my lower level households. There's the stair. So it's quite a steep stair. It doesn't look like an easy stair to climb, but they're free to go up and down. And it's all for people with dementia. And then that's an aerial view, not my picture, of that same courtyard, which is actually really pretty and lovely. So then, after Norway, we left Norway and went down to Copenhagen, and this is the Orestad Play Center. Now, Orestad is the organization, and they have, Orestad is the town that it's in, but this organization, CAB, which is Copenhagen Housing Association, have a number of these centres, and they're all based on a different type of theme. The theme for this one is art. So it naturally draws a specific type of person. So there are quite a lot of creators and artists move in here, but their theme and their sort of general daily mission is around creativity, which is really lovely. It opened in 2012, so this is the oldest one that you will see here. And it's interesting just to see, obviously it was designed in 2010, we're 14 years later, and actually it's really relevant still. It's been really well put together, and I think that if anyone built one of these today, it would be really good. So I do admire that. Also designed by JJW Architects. So it's a funky looking building, and it's in an area that's quite a new suburb, and at the time that it was built, it was almost one of the first. So it would have stood there, really exposed, with this kind of mad, funky exterior. Doesn't look like a nursing home, it looks like something quite playful and interesting. And it's now, got a lot of rebuilding around, a lot of apartment buildings, a lot of architects competing for their design kudos, including the Building 8 by Björk Eagles, which is just over the road. So it holds its own in that context, and it's still, I think, relevant. So you can see that care floors are quite clearly defined, or the accommodation floors and the colours, and then the bottom, the whole ground plane is a public space. So those are the common shared areas and all of the front of the house recreation areas, and it's really transparent with the street, so people in the street can see what's going on, people inside can see the street, so you have a lot of view sharing, and it's quite open in that regard. So this is another side, there's a lovely canal in the front, and then this angle, this is an early photograph of it. I think it's a photograph. But it's quite interesting to see that that facade is where all the accommodation is in the rooms, and all of these are service rooms, so they have a different pattern of fenestration. And the building is conceived around a courtyard, so there's this inner space, which is a really safe, protected space. This is also a full dementia care unit, but it's not thought of as a nursing home because they've got like many apartments, and each person gets a little living room, a kitchenette, a bedroom and bathroom, and one of those funky balconies. So they're not this sort of little aged care room modules, they're actually, there's a bit of space and a bit more dignity maybe. So this community, a lot of the people that live here have lived here for a while. It's very much an aging in place environment, so people are supported right through to the end of life, and all levels of dementia. So this middle space is a really safe little enclave away from the public zone. But the ground floor adjacent to the public zone is still, they use it every day for activities and functions and all kinds of things. I think there are 120 divide, and I'll show you another picture of how that works. But I'm not sure what the colour coding is, but it's basically a household on the top and a household on the bottom. And so there's two households in this plan. They share a kitchen, a dining room, and there'll be lounge spaces there. And so most of the balconies face into the courtyard along the edges, and then you can see that surface area there that had the green building with the little windows. A lot of glazing and a lot of connection even from the higher levels with the public domain. And you can see people just watching the street and people go by. And again, really good daylight. So some parts of it are quite hospitally, and I can make this because it's a slightly older building, but then the newer buildings do the same. So there's good old linoleum on the floors, you know, the junctions are quite basic, but it's still got this sort of, now because it's older, it's slightly worn character and texture, and you know, there's little bits of creations everywhere, hanging on the door, hanging in the window, there's art. They've used a sort of 60s motif for their joinery and their storage, which this is a room divider, and it works really well. Gaming room, there's lights. The kitchen is a key part of it, and it's a hard-working kitchen with stainless steel top and glass cupboards and quite sort of robust cabinetry. But it's, you can see it's used all the time, every day. And it's part of the lounge space, the living space. Sorry. And you can see and feel how light it is. And then, between this living space and then the corridors, is a very deliberate break between the two spaces. So there's a completely different colouring and tonal sort of feeling in that orange zone, which is the corridor. And you can see it here, so you're very consciously aware of leaving the lounge space and then going into your private corridor space. And it's, they're different colours on different floors, but it's, the lighting is subdued, kind of glows. I'm not sure how everyone reacts to the red, but it seems to work. And then, sorry, a few more. Every single dining room is different. They arrange furniture differently, there are different pictures on the walls, there's a lot going on, and it just makes it feel really homey, like familiar and something you recognise. So this is the typical room, which is interesting. It's really wide, 5.7 metres. It's a pretty wide module to put into a building, which typically would make it quite a long corridor, but they manage them with the numbers that they have on each floor. And then there's a fixed partition here, which you can put the TV on. And then they have a whole lot of movable sliding ones, which is that really light transparent one, so they can stack and move. So it's a sort of flexible wall between the bedroom and the living space. And again, a little bit of a crude threshold between the two, but it might be resolved. And they all have the bed hoists over the beds for the lifting equipment. And again, everybody does their bedroom differently, so the bed is on the wall, it's turned sideways. But again, it's quite a narrow room, so it's not a lot of space at the foot of the bed. And this is one room, this is a typical little layout of one. And then the architects on their website have a drawing just showing how they have done with the verandas. So they're actually like little funnels that are actually quite protected from the weather, but also a little bit of privacy, and that little bit of enclosure gives you, you know, a little bit more of your own private space. And then obviously the sun comes in and it's sunny, which is only for a few months of the year. But that whole sort of view sharing between the rooms, between the balconies, and that sort of transition of your private space into the shared space is really important. So people on the other side will know exactly what this lady does. They'll know when she goes out, they'll probably wave to each other. That whole sense of connection and community across the space is, I think, rather lovely. And then again, just a few snapshots of the corridors. I'm really interested in corridors because corridors, you can't avoid them. They're part of these buildings, and how people deal with them is always interesting. And you know, these are quite clinical feeling, but somehow the lighting was clever and it didn't feel too bad. It kind of felt like soft spaces. And then they have all these little interesting things on the wall where people can put their own stuff on the wall. Like there's a little shelf just in case someone wants to put something there, I think. And then, you know, there's the messy spaces where they imagine those agonizing tensions between wanting to get out and not being allowed out, and how bad that is for people's mental health. If you're, high functioning, but if you're not high functioning, it's even harder because they don't understand. So I think, that really sort of calm village model has a lot of merit and a lot of success. And then, putting in really good quality lighting. Please do good lighting. The quality of the light is really important. Having really good daylight is really important, and then varying internal light quality is so important for your own body clock, but it's healthy, it's mentally very stimulating. So you can manage that with the artificial lighting and the quality of daylight and offset them together. We've got really sophisticated technology that can do that for us, and you don't have to run around and do it, and there can be lots of sensors that can manage the light and the luminance.